Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
It was clearly established that the number of people that can be in the same living quarter needed a change.
The residents in our council, we have had so many disruptions. I think council needs to have a serious discussion about what is the least disruptive and what is the most fair.
It's actually very sad. Like, it's just something to do with the family and everything. So it's like a little hobby that people could do. And it's kind of like break-in because it's closing.
Thanks for joining us. The pause on temporary foreign workers arriving in Windsor, Essex is reigniting complaints about poor housing standards. It's something upper levels of government have been promising to fix for years, with health experts saying cramped living quarters are responsible for the spread of COVID-19 among farm workers during the pandemic. But a recent audit of inspections show the government isn't keeping their promises. The CBC's Chris Ensing joins me live now in studio. Chris, we're going to get to that audit in just a second, but first, what is happening right now to the workers?
Yeah, Kat, there's hundreds of workers in Mexico right now who are really in limbo. They had tickets booked, bags were packed, and they were expecting to fly to Toronto, arrive in Windsor, Essex this month. But this pause puts those plans on hold. The Consul of Mexico in Leamington, they're working with them right now, making sure that they don't incur any extra costs caused by this change.
Many of them have to go through also, domestic flights and trips in order to get to Mexico City and to take the flight here. So that's what we want to avoid. If there are already people who have made the trip, how can we help them there? And if not, just to make certain that they can either be placed on a rescheduled flight, but not necessarily in canceling and then starting again.
Now, the Ontario government says that there's about 400 workers who are scheduled to arrive here in Windsor, Essex over the next 3 weeks, 350 from Mexico, the rest from Jamaica. Now, the consul also expressed Mexico's desire to see living conditions improve for migrant workers, saying that she's toured farms that go above and beyond minimum standards, but that there's also places where cramped living conditions, they allow that virus to rapidly spread among workers, Kat.
Well, Chris, we heard that from the health unit yesterday, the acting medical officer of health calling these conditions inefficient. The government's promised to make those standards better. So have they?
Not yet, Kat. I asked for an interview with the minister in charge of the temporary foreign worker program. I've been asking all week. They were not available. So I put those comments from the acting medical officer of health to Windsor to come see MP Eric Kuzmarchuk.
Need to raise housing standards for migrant workers, full stop. And so our federal government made a commitment. Right now, we're in discussions with the province. As you know, housing is a provincial jurisdiction, but we are committed to working with the provinces to improve housing standards and accommodation for migrant workers. And so those conversations are ongoing.
But they've been going on for years with little evidence to show they're following through, according to the Auditor General of Canada. This report, released December, is a scathing look at how the Ministry of Employment and Social Development Canada managed the temporary foreign worker program. It found that inspections provided little assurance of protection for the health and safety of migrant workers during the pandemic. They told the government about the shortcomings in 2020, but found that inspections worsened in 2021 despite the issues raised. It wrote that the government committed to establishing minimum accommodation requirements before the pandemic, but the Auditor General found no evidence that it had done either of these things. The report includes examples. One unnamed farm had an outbreak, an inspector interviewing the employer a week after. That employer saying employees who tested negative and positive for COVID-19 were isolating in shared spaces. That employer also declined an offer to isolate those employees at an isolation hotel. The inspector issued correctable measures, but didn't follow up for more than a month, only contacting the public health unit 3 months after the outbreak. And the audit found no evidence that the inspection included interviews with employees, a requirement. The employer also failed to provide photos of the corrected measures. Now, that's one example highlighted inside of that report. It found problems in about 73% of the quarantine inspections that were examined during the federal government's ruling in 2020, and they found problems in 88% of quarantine inspections that happened in 2021. Kat.
Thanks for this, Chris. CBC's Chris Ensing live tonight. Councillors in Essex are weighing their options about how to fill the empty mayor's seat. Larry Snively resigned from the post yesterday after pleading guilty to violating the Ontario Elections Act. He admitted to procuring ineligible voters to cast ballots on behalf of others during the 2018 municipal election. And on Monday, council will need to pass a motion to officially vacate the mayor's seat, and then they'll have a few choices, including moving for a by-election or appointing someone to the position.
The most logical, in my mind, would be to go to the runner-up because he does have experience and he's chaired meetings before. He's more than competent and capable of chairing the meeting for the next 9 months. And then it doesn't really give anybody an unfair advantage going into the fall election.
Absolutely, I would. It's a position I've vied for in the past. I think I worked very hard in campaigning, and it's something I feel strongly about, is serving a municipality that you reside in.
Rogers was non-committal when asked whether he would run for mayor again. Ward 2 councillor Kim Verbeek says she's waiting to hear out all the options before deciding what to do, but says she's not interested in a by-election. Morley Bowman, a Ward 1 councillor, says he's leaning toward appointing someone but wouldn't share who he has in mind. A political science professor says an appointment is the most likely option.
Because the election season is going to start in earnest anyway, I think it would be a big distraction to have a by-election at this time. So it does make sense just on a practical matter, given just how little time's left in this mandate, to appoint a interim mayor. I would simply have it be somebody already on council. They already have a process of having a deputy mayor. I mean, that is the point of having a deputy mayor. And so this is those odd instances that when the mayor can't assume their duties, then the deputy mayor steps in, and that happens on a regular basis anyway.
The public school board here in Windsor, Essex says it's ready to resume in-person learning. It says it has masks and filters that it needs to provide a safe learning environment. According to the board, only older buildings without mechanical ventilation systems will need to have higher efficiency air filters installed.
Where we do have classrooms and offices and buildings and rooms that are occupied that have mechanical ventilation systems, they also have MERV 13 filtration, and thus they do not require the HEPA standalone units. It is a misnomer that people think every classroom will be getting a HEPA unit. That is incorrect. We have 3 different types of HEPA units that we have out in our system, again, that make up the 941 that we have. This is one of our makes and models, and this is a HEPA filter for them. For our HEPA units that we do have out in the system, they are serviced and maintained monthly by preventative maintenance staff who will come service and clean the unit, clean the screen side. The actual HEPA filter itself is changed once per annum.
Over at the Public Board's warehouse, staff members packed 24,000 N95 masks into this truck today. These masks have already been delivered to Vincent Massey, Westview Freedom Academy, and W.C. Kennedy Collegiate. They will be available to teachers only. The board is now waiting on a shipment of thousands of 3-ply cloth masks for students, rapid tests, and 44 additional air filters. Meanwhile, the Catholic School Board has also received a shipment of N95 masks for staff use. Staff there are still waiting to receive a shipment of masks for students, which are scheduled to arrive in time for Monday's classes. Meanwhile, local hospitalization numbers, they are continuing to rise. 95 people are in hospital with COVID-19 in Windsor, Essex as of today, and that's nearly doubled in the last week. 14 patients are in the ICU. In Leamington, Erie Shores Healthcare is at 138% capacity. This as the province hits a new high of 3,630 patients in hospital. Now, we've also told you about the strain on staffing levels. At Windsor Regional, 382 staff, they are in isolation as of today, but there is a positive sign. The rate of workers being cleared to come back to work, that is outpacing how many workers need to stay home. The intensive care unit at Sarnia's hospital is overwhelmed. The city has a lower vaccination rate than most of the province. The ICU has seen mostly unvaccinated patients, like 64-year-old Randy Sams. He barely escaped being placed on life support.
These scares from the vaccine, don't be afraid, because you don't know what's going to happen either way. So but you certainly don't want to be put on life support or be put out, because it could cost you your life.
You can see Thomas Dagla's exclusive coverage of this story tonight on The National. The loss of the Silver City Cineplex in Windsor is striking a nostalgic tone with some Windsorites. The company said yesterday that it would not be renewing its lease at the location. While that has an effect on the surrounding business's bottom line, it also has some taking a walk down memory lane. Jacob Barker has more on that.
When you're a kid, movies seem bigger than life.
Silver City was the place to go to when you're in high school and to go watch movies with friends and stay out of trouble.
Drew Hittenraw is a cinematographer from Windsor. Today he works on commercial projects, but always dreamed of being on the big screen.
I haven't had anything screened at the theater. I've had a few commercials that I played in theaters, but it's different. It's cool to see it on the big screen. It's a completely different experience.
Cineplex has decided to keep its cinemas open at Devonshire Mall, saying people prefer to attend that one when open. But for Heightenraw, Silver City was always the place to be.
Yeah, Silver City was just a better theater to go to. We had bigger screens, better sound, the Dolby AVX systems and everything.
And dinner and a movie in this area, no more. The loss of the theater, a hit to their bottom lines. It might affect your bottom line here a little bit.
Yeah, especially for like the dinner rush, I would say, because like it'd be dinner and then a movie, but it might slow down for the dinner rush if it's like closing down.
Fewer theaters doesn't just mean fewer seats, it also means fewer screens, and that could mean less diversity in what is shown.
In any film market, you have many theaters that'll show your top 10 films at the box office, and then when there's extra screens, they'll start taking some more programmatic risks. There's some great Canadian films have been shown at that Silver City. Some recently have been bringing in also some other music films, some Hindi films as well. That's what evaporates.
The company said it was not a function of the pandemic, but that people prefer to go to the Devonshire location. But Georgie says he believes the crowds will come back.
That litmus test we saw pre this last closure with the Spider-Man film was very, very, very encouraging. Very encouraging, actually.
A loss for Hittenraw that hits hard.
It's sad because it was a part of Windsor, and we're losing that thing that we all shared experiences with growing up, and it's sad that we're only going to have one or two theaters in the city. And with the pandemic happening, it's kind of pushing us more towards staying at home and watching and binging Netflix, and that's not the same. It's not the same as going to the movies.
Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
A couple of Windsor businessmen are joining forces to stay afloat during the pandemic. Together, they run 4 downtown bars and restaurants, and now they've merged to survive. They say pandemic restrictions have been brutal for those in the service industry.
We're watching all of our friends in this industry getting decimated. I know people have taken out all the equity in their home, maxed out credit cards, sold their cars. I mean, they've turned in their kids' graduation funds to keep their businesses afloat right now.
And when you're closed, there's no pause on your mortgage or your rent or your insurance or everything else. You just basically have to figure out how many days before bankruptcy.
The merged businesses include the Patio Lounge, the Chatham Street Diner, the Primary Social Club, and the Dugout. By joining forces, the owners say they're able to save money by having better buying power, streamlining costs, combining operating systems, and they can also shift staff fluidly. Michigan and Ontario are cooperating in a study to see if commercial goods could be transported across the border using drones. The feasibility study is in its early stages, and a number of issues still need to be worked out. But the head of the Ontario Vehicle Innovation Network sees great potential.
This is just another opportunity and another technology that may be useful in the future to move goods in a safe and efficient manner. But this study is really the very, very early stages for us to better understand how this technology can support us and how it fits into different opportunities, not just economic, but social and environmental.
The head of the Cross-Border Institute at the University of Windsor says there are many outstanding safety concerns, like how to operate the drones beyond line of sight and how the goods would be inspected by customs. In addition to auto parts, the drones could also be used to transport medical supplies. It's not known when exactly the study will be completed. Canada is teaming up with Mexico to challenge a U.S. interpretation of trade rules relating to auto parts. The two countries argue the Biden administration's Buy American policy is a violation of the new NAFTA deal that went into effect last year. They say it's putting all North American manufacturers at a disadvantage. CBC's Ashley Burke is in Washington with the latest.
This year-long dispute escalated today. Canada's International Trade Minister Mary Ng releasing a statement saying Canada is joining Mexico's official complaint. It argues that the way the Biden administration is now interpreting a key provision in the trade pact isn't what they all agreed on in 2019 during Donald Trump's time in office. That provision requires that 75% of vehicles or its core parts, things like engines, transmissions, steering wheels, have to be manufactured regionally in order to qualify to be duty-free. If not, the U.S. could charge tariffs. The president of Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association says if the U.S. goes ahead with its interpretation, it could have huge implications across North America.
Automakers may choose not to try to comply with the new rules, take the 2.5% penalty, and buy their parts, global quality parts, in countries outside of North America. The biggest winners will be those low-cost Asian countries or Eastern European countries that make the same parts, very cheap labor, and they'll just become part of the American and Canadian cars that we all see on the road today.
Volpe says that goes against the whole point of this part of the trade agreement to boost domestic production. And it could make countries overseas the biggest winners in all of this, and Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. the biggest losers, he says. Now, when these three countries negotiated the new NAFTA, they included a dispute settlement panel process. It will be up to that panel now to sort all of this out, and there is some time. This new rule isn't slated to go into effect until 2025. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Washington.
Ottawa says the vaccine mandate for truckers crossing into Canada from the United States will come into effect this Saturday as planned. That's despite a statement the Canada Border Services Agency sent out yesterday saying that Canadian truck drivers would be exempt. The government says the CBSA statement was, quote, provided in error. It clarified that Canadian truckers must be vaccinated if they want to avoid quarantine and a pre-arrival molecular test starting this weekend. The government also stated that unvaccinated American truckers will be turned back at the border. The U.S. will impose similar restrictions on Canadian truckers on January 22nd. It's called Wordle, and if you haven't heard about it yet, you will soon. It's the new online game that's become a sensation. And as Aaron Collins reports, it's also seen by many as an ideal pandemic pastime.
For millions around the world, this is a new part of their daily routine.
That's not how you spell vapor, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Wordle. 6 chances to guess a 5-letter word, but the online game has a catch. Just 1 word, 1 puzzle per day.
It's almost like that economy of not having too much, right? Just giving you a little bit of a snippet.
At this board game cafe, Wordle's concept immediately familiar.
Seems like it's based on like a really old game like Mastermind and Boggle, but it's like mashed up together.
A new take on older games, but some enigmatologists, that's a puzzle expert, say it's a perfect fit for the pandemic.
It's like, okay, this is my new ritual every morning. Maybe it's my cup of coffee and just kind of doing this. Okay, I'm ready for this. I did really well. I'm ready to do my work at home, or I'm ready to kind of go on with my day.
Of course, before players do that, many brag online to friends and family about how they did.
And as soon as you share your results, everyone's like, oh, hey, I could try that. And how come it took me 6 tries? And, how are you doing this?
You feel like you're part of this bigger thing because I know it's taken off.
Wordle got so big, copycat games began to spring up. Apple stepped in, removing them from its app store, ensuring Wordle fans will still be limited to 1 word per day. A way to help weather the pandemic, according to this gaming expert.
Break a negative cognitive thinking state that you're in and distract yourself for a short while with something that can help you enter a more positive state.
Well, back at the cafe, that idea rings true.
What's the alternative? Just being at home watching Netflix? You can only do that for so long until you kind of go crazy and you run out of stuff to play, right?
It turns out games is a 5-letter word helping many navigate these complex times. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
I'm so glad that we had this story because yesterday I turned to a colleague and said, have you seen this Wordle thing? I have no idea what this is. What is it? So now we all know. Guess we're gonna have to try it. Live look outside there. Chance of flurries -6 tonight. And Colette, she'll be here right after the break with your weather. We bring in Colette Kennedy now for a look at our weather. Colette, I'm sure you've been cooking up the forecast for us, so what's going on?
I know, you can't resist, right? Yes, I've been working on a special recipe here. We are talking about some significant changes in the weather, though, and serious in terms of cold air coming back, some extremely cold air. It's going to be moving in. It's not quite as bad into southwestern Ontario as we're going to find a little bit further east for our neighbors there, but still, it's a big change from where we are. So let me show you what's going on. First of all, we just kind of take a look at what's going on with those daytime highs today. Nice to see those readings above freezing. It doesn't happen all that much in January, and even the current temperature is still at 1 degree. Now Chatham-Kent, you're at -1, Harrow at 1 degree at the moment, and Leamington as well. But having a look at, the cloud cover, which has been so stubborn, and mist and fog, And it's really going to take quite some time to carve that away in southwestern Ontario. So the clearing will begin as that cold air is sinking in overnight, but especially tomorrow into Saturday morning. But it's going to linger a little longer. I'll show you for southwestern Ontario. We just see that cloud cover still there tomorrow before we get some better clearing. Now you'll see that system deepening into Atlantic Canada. That's going to be serious for them. But what I want to show you what's happening with that system to the west between Kansas City and Minneapolis. That will deepen over the weekend and then move back up towards southern Ontario into Monday, bringing significant snow, it does look like, but mostly for our neighbors to the east of us. This is a model that's keeping it well to the east, but also this one's going a little lower with some of the accumulations. I actually think we could be seeing more than that, including from London onward, where we're talking about 5-10 centimeters or more in eastern Ontario up to 30. But right now, and this could change, keep in mind, this is still a few days away, so I'll keep monitoring this, but this could change. Right now, it is just looking like a glancing blow for Windsor towards Leamington, up towards Sarnia, with traces to lesser amounts of snowfall. But that is for the end of the weekend and back into Monday, so that's certainly something to watch very carefully. And in the interim, Katarina, that colder air moves in, especially you'll notice it tomorrow night into Saturday morning. So just as we kind of head into the weekend, we've got to look after ourselves and look after our pets as well. Just a bit of a reminder there. It can be harmful to them as well.
Absolutely. That's a good reminder. Self-care all around. Thanks so much, Colette. Now, when we come back, I've got 2 words for you. Baby, tiger. Stay with us. A new addition to one of the world's most endangered species has made its grand debut in England. The rare Sumatran tiger cub took its first wobbly steps outside yesterday at the London Zoo. The video shows the month-old cub padding across the enclosure before being scooped up by its mother, Geisha. Sumatran tigers are one of the most endangered species on Earth, and it's estimated that only 300 remain in the wild in Indonesia. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.